The wall of silence has now been broken, and victims are coming forward. Our team has had, at this point, more than 3,285 individuals contact us, with people claiming to have been victimized by SeanCombs.
The courtroom was
already drowning in tension long before the moment arrived. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared anyone inside those four walls for what came next. Diddy, a man who had spent decades crafting a powerful, untouchable image of himself as
He wasn't kidding when he announced that he plans to file a wave of lawsuits on behalf of 120 alleged sexual assault victims of SeanCombs. He wasn't bluffing. And as he has said, he's not only going after Combs, but corporate entities too. And we reported to you how last week he filed 6 lawsuits, and now he has just filed a bunch more. I'll give you an example. We have one lawsuit now where a woman who claims she was drugged and raped by Combs during a Las Vegas event back in 2014. We have other claims that are more recent, by the way. These allegations are all from 2022. A businessman who claims that Combs sexually assaulted him during a Ciroc party back in 2022. A woman who claims she was drugged and raped by Combs at a house party in Manhattan back in 2022. Another man who claims he was drugged and repeatedly sexually assaulted by Combs and others, including an unnamed celebrity. This at an award show after party in LA back in 2022. But the one we want to focus on right now is a very, very disturbing claim. As if all of these aren't disturbing, but this one is especially heinous, because I think the best way to describe this is the very first paragraph of this new lawsuit. It reads, in the complaint, defendant Combs drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl at a house party. Many others were present but did nothing to stop it. Some participated in it. Combs has been allowed for years to conduct himself in this manner without any consequences. He believes he is above the law. He is not. Yeah. Now again, I've said this before, while Combs is currently facing federal criminal charges of racketeering and sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution, none of those criminal charges are related to minors. However, a number of these lawsuits, including from Tony Busby, they focused on the alleged abuse of underage people. And it makes you wonder if Combs will be hit with a superseding indictment. That means when you go back to the grand jury for additional or revised charges, will Combs be hit with a superseding indictment that involves minors? Have to ask the question in light of these allegations. You have to wonder if any of the people who have sued Combs, are they cooperating with the government? You have to wonder if the government really has all the evidence they need to charge him with respect to minors, but maybe they're not doing so yet. Maybe they're keeping it in their back pocket for now. Maybe to push Combs to take a plea. Maybe they're only now getting this information and are authenticating it to bring these claims, to bring new charges. We don't know if their case will ever be about minors. I will tell you one thing. If minors come into the mix, it makes SeanCombs' defense to the federal criminal charges he's facing much more difficult. His defense right now is everything was consensual. When you're dealing with minors, that defense doesn't work anymore. And by the way, as we're talking about high-profile people, as we're talking about unnamed celebrities in these lawsuits, including the one I'm about to get into, remember what Tony Busby told TMZ. He said that a number of high-profile people have even come to him already to settle their claims so they are not named in these lawsuits. It makes you wonder if the people that he mentions in these lawsuits are people who've already settled their claims, so they're not named as defendants, they're not identified. I mean, if you think about it, that would be a PR and legal nightmare if they're named in these lawsuits. Even though these are just allegations, the fact that they would be tied to SeanCombs right now, who's toxic, they might be avoiding that. So that
sat stiff in his chair as though his entire body
sat stiff in his chair as though his entire body was locked in place. He had faced prosecutors, lawyers, accusers, and critics before, and he had learned how to wear his armor well, smirking when things got heavy, shaking his head when accusations sounded wild, whispering into his lawyer's ears when he wanted to project confidence. But on this day, as he sat waiting for another witness to take the stand, he had no idea the ground beneath his feet was about to collapse. The doors opened, and when the next witnesses walked in, the air in the room shifted. It wasn't a rival. It wasn't an outsider. It wasn't another accuser trying to bring down the man who once called himself the king of bad boy. It was his daughters, The very people he believed would stand behind him no matter what. The very people he thought he could count on for support during the storm were now walking toward the stand, ready to speak against him. The silence was deafening. The jurors leaned in, sensing something historic about to unfold. The judge straightened in his chair.
The family of Sean Diddy Combs celebrating after learning his long-awaited fate in court. The family staying stoic as they entered Diddy's courthouse July 2nd, before departing with smiles and waves after hearing the media mogul's partial victory, not guilty on 3 out of the 5 counts, covering charges for racketeering and sex trafficking. Per NBC News reporters inside the courtroom, Diddy's loved ones were seen celebrating the results of his now winding down legal saga. The Bad Boy Records founder is facing 2 convictions, both surrounding prostitution offenses. NBC News noting Diddy's son Christian King Combs said his dad was feeling great about the verdicts, with Diddy reportedly telling his gathered family, "Thank you, love you." Chance Combs spotted seemingly wiping away tears alongside her grandma, who gave a thumbs up to the media frenzy outside the Manhattan courthouse, following weeks of putting up a united front for Diddy, who maintained his innocence across all charges.
Years old at the time, as if these allegations couldn't get worse. Now, we've been closely following the legal drama that's been stalking Sean Combs, and right now, as we know, he's locked up in the Metropolitan Detention Center out in Brooklyn. He's been denied bond twice. His attorneys, though, they plan to try for a 3rd time to get him out of lockup as he waits for trial. He's now going to be petitioning the new judge overseeing this case, Judge Arun Subramanian. And we actually just learned that when it comes to where he's locked up, multiple agencies are investigating the Metropolitan Detention Center, the MDC, maybe looking into the conditions, maybe doing a sweep of contraband in the area. We did actually a whole sidebar episode dedicated to that because the circumstances in that facility are pretty horrific. And we were wondering whether or not Sean Combs and the notoriety of his case has facilitated or has led to this investigation. We talked about it. You can check it out on our Long Crime YouTube channel. It should be up there right now. Now, as we get into these latest developments, I have to warn you. I have to give you a trigger warning here. These details are not only unimaginable, but they're horrifying. They're horrifying. They can be incredibly difficult to listen to. I gotta tell you, I was reading these lawsuits and I even winced because it's so just disgusting. It's incredibly disturbing. But look, this is a legal case now, and it's important to understand what the victims are alleging, the legal basis for their claims, what evidence they may have to support their claims, and the impact that this could have on Sean Combs and, of course, his criminal case. So with that in mind, we're going to talk about it. Now, before we even get into the actual claims of this lawsuit, I have to give you a brief background about where we're at. So a grand jury in the Southern District of New York indicted Sean Combs on federal charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. He was arrested on September 16th. He's been, as I said, behind bars ever since after being denied bail. And prosecutors say that Combs used his money, his influence, to organize what are called freak-offs. These are essentially orgies that involved hiring male sex workers, procuring drugs, and then filming these sex acts. That he used force, fraud, coercion to get what he wanted. That he engaged in a campaign of
their voices cracked. Their eyes darted around the courtroom, clearly feeling the weight of what they were about to do. But soon, hesitation gave way to resolve. They weren't here to protect their father anymore. They weren't here to shield a man behind the fame, the money, and the empire. They were here to tell the truth, no matter how disturbing, no matter how shocking, no matter how devastating it might be. And when their word began to spill out, the room shifted again. They began recalling moments the public never knew about. Behind the mansions, the private jets, and the flashing cameras, there was another side of Diddy's world, a side his daughters knew all too well. They spoke of control, of manipulation, of nights when the glamorous exterior slipped away, and the man beneath the image revealed himself in ways no one would ever imagine. These weren't vague hints or carefully chosen words. These were disturbing secrets spoken clearly, directly, with a conviction that made it impossible for anyone to dismiss them as exaggerations. The jury leaned closer. Reporters scrambled to jot down every detail. Even the judge's eyes were sharp with focus as the daughters.
Well, after Combs' arrest on federal sex crimes charges, Brown posted on Instagram, "In a nutshell, Kimberly was allegedly taken from us because she was set on course to accomplish what Mrs. Cassie Ventura did by igniting the bonfire which brings us here today." Ventura, of course, is Combs' ex-girlfriend who filed that initial sexual assault, sex trafficking lawsuit against Sean Combs last year. It spiraled into multiple other lawsuits and arguably spiraled into these charges that he's now facing today. And Brown wrote, "I'm writing this post to formally request an investigation into an entire group of individuals who worked at or around the residence of Miss Kimberly Porter." And he called her death a tragic murder. Now, interestingly, there are reports that Al B. Shore has even taken more security measures after asking for an investigation. In fact, he was presented an award at the American Liver Foundation's National Legacy Gala in New York. And in his speech, he says, "We even have Homeland Security in the building. Detective Jackson, good to see you." Not entirely sure what he's talking about, what he's referencing, but considering it was Homeland Security that raided Sean Combs' properties in LA and Miami and collected all that evidence that federal prosecutors are now using in their criminal case against him, interesting comment to make. Now, Gene Deal, this is Combs' former bodyguard, spoke on the Art of Deal podcast about this, and he said, "You got to realize, man, Kim's death wasn't even investigated." He went on to say, "How is it that there was no electronic products or gadgets around Kim? Be her laptop missing, her cell phone's missing, everything is missing that she could get in touch with her little girls if they're not at home, or her friends or family. All that's missing. How is it that? All that's missing. How is it that?" The detectives didn't even examine Porter's body where she passed away. And Deal emphasized, if that is true, that case needs to be reopened. And also in regards to the idea that she got a massage right before her death, he also said, "Who gives somebody a massage when they get pneumonia?" Deal also apparently took issue with the alleged timing of buying her gold casket. He said, "How you order a gold casket 2 months before somebody dies?" And he even addressed Al B. Shore beefing up his security. Al ain't no fool. He's smart by getting extra security. Now, with all of this as a backdrop, the last time we talked about Kim Porter on Sidebar is when a book was published on Amazon. It was entitled Kim's Lost Words, A Journey for Justice from the Other Side. It is allegedly a memoir from Kim Porter herself detailing her relationship with Sean Combs, but it reportedly contains typos, shocking claims, some are saying even inaccurate statements. In fact, Quincy Brown, Christian, Jesse Delilah Combs, they wrote in a joint statement on Instagram, "We have seen so many hurtful and false rumors circulating about our parents, Kim Porter and Sean Combs' relationship, as well as about our mom's tragic passing, that we feel the need to speak out. Claims that our mom wrote a book are simply untrue. She did not. And anyone claiming to have a manuscript is misrepresenting themselves." And by the way, even Combs authorized his attorney Erica Wolf to release a statement on his behalf regarding the new book, stating, "The Kim Porter memoir is fake. It is also offensive, a shameless attempt to profit from tragedy. Chris Todd has no respect for Miss Porter or her family, who deserve better. Unlike the fabrications in his sickening memoir, it is
on magazine cover."
Ogle, who gave interviews about family, success, and love, and each word from their mouths was like a hammer slamming down on the fragile image he had been trying desperately to keep intact. Diddy couldn't take it? He started shaking his head, whispering under his breath, muttering, "No, no, no," as though he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else. His lawyers tried to calm him, placing firm hands on his shoulder, leaning into his ear with whispered instructions to stay quiet, to breathe, to keep it together, but it was useless. The weight of betrayal, the shock of seeing his own children become the ones to strip him bare in front of the world was too much for him to handle. His composure snapped. His hands slammed down on the defense table, the sound echoing across the courtroom like a gunshot. His voice broke through the silence, loud, raw, and desperate. "That's not true." The judge immediately slammed his gavel, calling for order, demanding silence, warning Diddy to control himself or face consequences. But the damage had already been done. Everyone in that room, from the jury to the media sitting in the back row, had seen him lose it. They had seen the panic in his eyes, The desperation
by his ex Cassandra Ventura nearly a year ago that started the whole ball rolling with this legal saga. He has not admitted any culpability. While he did apologize on Instagram after the 2016 video of him purportedly beating Cassandra Ventura at a hotel hallway surfaced by CNN. But other than that, look, to be clear, he hasn't been found liable in any court. He hasn't been found guilty of any wrongdoing in any court. So right now, he is presumed innocent. And these are allegations. They're serious allegations, but they're allegations. But having said that, what is being put out there now in the course of these new civil lawsuits is arguably even worse than what we've heard before. It's kind of hard to judge, but let me get into this. Because on Monday, Tony Busby and his legal partners, they filed a suit against Combs on behalf of a John Doe who lives in California. The lawsuit states, this case seeks compensatory and punitive damages for the drugging and sexual assault of a 10-year-old boy when he met defendant Sean Combs for an audition. The conduct described herein is shockingly typical of how Combs conducted himself for many years. And look, that is true. Many of the allegations from Combs' accusers say they were drugged and then they were assaulted, that this is a pattern. And of course, we know when it comes to the federal charges, Combs is accused of using drugs to have people engage in those freak-off sessions. By the way, when we talk about compensatory damages, those are damages to really restore someone to whole where they were before the incident, and punitive damages are a way to punish the defendant. Okay, but back to the lawsuit. Combs isn't the only defendant named. In fact, this is very typical of a lot of the lawsuits we're seeing because it's not just Combs, it's business entities. Because the plaintiff also alleges here misconduct by multiple companies that are associated with Sean Combs and his entertainment empire. This includes Combs Enterprises LLC, Bad Boy Entertainment LLC, there are more. The complaint reads, on the surface, each of these businesses served a legitimate purpose related to entertainment, music, and other subjects, but in reality, Combs, by and through himself and his agents, employees, and contractors, used these businesses to sexually assault, abuse, threaten, and coerce hundreds of individuals through sexual quid pro quo schemes, as well as to take advantage of individuals with impunity, thinking the victims would never seek recourse. Combs and his agents, employees, and contractors through these Combs businesses would tell victims, this is what it takes to be famous, what are you willing to do to become a star, and perform this sexual act or else, to coerce the victim into performing a non-consensual sexual act for the gratification of Combs and his cohorts. Now again, that is very consistent with the criminal racketeering charge that Combs faces, that he used his businesses to further illegal activities like sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson. But let's talk about the specific claims from this John Doe in this lawsuit. Again, trigger warning, very difficult to listen to, but it says, quote, in 2005, plaintiff was a 10-year-old boy interested in becoming an actor and or rapper. Plaintiff lived in the Los Angeles area and used his proximity to the entertainment industry to secure several acting roles and a part in a music video. To help their son's burgeoning career, plaintiff's parents found and hired an industry consultant through an internet ad. The consultant recommended that the family visit New York City to meet with people in the music industry. During the trip, plaintiff's consultant arranged a meeting with defendant
Combs. Their voices steadied with every word, as though each seeked
for far too long. The stories they told weren't just shocking. They were devastating. The glamorous mogul was gone, replaced by the portrait of a man who had hidden too much for too long. A man whose empire had been built on foundations more disturbing than the public ever realized. By the time their testimonies ended, the courtroom was buzzing with unspoken energy. Spectators were exchanging glances, whispering to one another in disbelief. The jurors looked shaken, some visibly disturbed by what they had heard. Even the judge, usually stoic and unmoved, had a hardened expression, as though the words of the daughters had cut through even his thick judicial shell. And then there was Diddy. He was shattered, his body slumped in his chair, his face drenched with sweat, his eyes unfocused and hollow, his hands trembled on the table. He stared straight ahead, but it was as if he wasn't even in the room anymore. The man who had built himself up to be larger than life now looked small, broken, and stripped of the invincibility he had always projected. The ripple effect was immediate. Outside the courthouse, the media frenzy exploded. Headlines hit within minutes. Diddy's daughters testify against him.
Might be one reason why we see unnamed celebrity 1, unnamed celebrity 2. Anyway, we don't know exactly what's happening, but what we do know is that these allegations are a disturbing pattern regarding children. And I want to break down this lawsuit now. So this lawsuit is filed by Jane Doe. She's unnamed. And this was filed in federal court in the Southern District of New York. That is the same jurisdiction where Combs is being federally prosecuted. And in many ways, the lawsuit mirrors the allegations in the indictment. For example, the complaint reads, quote, "For decades, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, Diddy, PD, Love, abused, molested, raped, assaulted, threatened, and coerced women, minors, and others for sexual gratification to assert dominance and to conceal his abhorrent conduct. He accomplished these acts by and through a criminal enterprise built on his success as a rapper, record producer, and record executive." Again, very similar to the language that was used in the indictment to describe the racketeering conspiracy charge that he faces, that he allegedly operated and controlled this criminal enterprise to carry out various crimes like sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping. Those terms are actually both in this complaint and in the indictment. And I'm going to get into the other defendants who are being sued in this lawsuit besides Combs in a second, but I do want to call out a unique aspect to this lawsuit. And in fact, it's a unique aspect not just to this suit, but the other Tony Busby lawsuits. They almost use the same beginning language, the same preface, talking about Sean Combs' illegal empire, talking about the, quote, pervasive history of sexual assault and violence. So it's not even directly addressing the individual plaintiff's claims yet. It's kind of setting the stage to understand who the defendant is, the power that he wielded, the alleged danger and threat that he is, maybe as a way to explain why these defendants did not come forward initially with their claims. For example, this lawsuit reads, "Combs' recurrent and pervasive physical abuse took place for multiple decades. His tendencies of violence and sexual assault were well known amongst his colleagues, employees, agents, and businesses. On numerous occasions from at least in or about 1996 and continuing for years, Combs assaulted women and men by striking, punching, dragging, throwing objects at, and kicking them. Combs also assaulted children both physically and sexually. In 1996, Combs was found guilty of criminal mischief for threatening a photographer from the New York Post with a gun. In 1999, he was arrested and charged with second-degree assault and criminal mischief in connection with assaulting a record executive." By the way, I just have to call something out. Even besides those last legal cases that I just mentioned in this quote, the sexual assault allegations, the sex trafficking allegations, all of this are just allegations. He hasn't been found guilty of anything yet. He hasn't been found liable with respect to any of this yet. So it is interesting that Tony Busby is using this language to kind of build up his case, even though, again, to be clear, Sean Combs hasn't been found guilty and hasn't been found liable with respect to any of this, and he's been denying this. Anyway, and to couple that, the lawsuit also lays out all of the civil suits from the past year, from Cassandra Ventura.
Family betrayal shocks courtroom. Disturbing secrets revealed. Social media erupted in a firestorm of reactions. Some fans couldn't believe what they were reading, insisting it had to be exaggerated, fabricated, or twisted. But others said it was the final nail in the coffin. If his own daughters were revealing these things, how could anyone deny it anymore? How could anyone claim this was just another smear campaign or opportunistic attack? The courtroom was buzzing with tension. Every revelation from his daughters echoed louder than any testimony before. People began exchanging glances, whispering to one another, stunned at the betrayal, stunned at the courage, stunned at the sheer weight of what was being revealed. It wasn't outsiders making these claims anymore. It wasn't rivals. It wasn't accusers from afar. This was his family, the very people who knew him best, and their words carried a power no one could ignore. The betrayal cut deeper than any lawsuit, deeper than any accusation from outsiders. This wasn't rivals speaking out. This wasn't critics or enemies. This was blood. This was family. And their words carried a weight that not even the most expensive legal team in the world could spin away. For Diddy, the impact was devastating. He had built his entire brand around the idea of family, loyalty, and legacy. He had paraded his children in interviews.
She signed it, but she wasn't given a copy. So then she says she goes inside and she describes the scene. inside the house as being filled with many celebrities. There were drinks, there was loud music, there was drug use like marijuana and cocaine. And then this is where she says things took a very dark turn. Quote, plaintiff accepted a drink, a reddish yellow mixture that tasted like orange juice, cranberry juice, and something bitter. After drinking just one drink, plaintiff began to feel woozy and lightheaded, making her need to lie down. And embedded in this complaint is what Jane Doe claims is a photograph of an actual, quote, exemplary container that she says Combs or his associates used to inject GHB into these drinks. The complaint continues, looking for a place to rest, plaintiff entered what she believed to be an empty bedroom so she could lie down for a moment. She did not lock the door. Soon after, Combs, along with a male and female celebrity, entered the room. Combs aggressively approached plaintiff with a crazed look in his eyes, grabbed her, and said, "You are ready to party." Combs then threw plaintiff toward another male celebrity, Celebrity A, again unnamed, who removed plaintiff's clothes as she grew more and more disoriented. Plaintiff was held down by Celebrity A, who raped her while Combs and Celebrity B, a female, watched. After the male celebrity finished, Combs then raped plaintiff while the Celebrity A and Celebrity B watched. Combs attempted to force plaintiff to perform oral sex on him, but she resisted by hitting Combs in the neck. He stopped. Plaintiff grabbed her clothes and shoes and left the bedroom, roaming naked through the house looking for the exit as the party continued. That means there were witnesses to see what happened here. Once outside, plaintiff put her clothes back on and left the scene in the dark. Eventually, plaintiff reached a gas station. A female clerk noticed her distressed and allowed her to use the phone. Plaintiff called her father and admitted that she had lied about her whereabouts and asked him to pick her up. After the assault, plaintiff fell into a deep depression, which continues to affect every facet of her life. Okay, so clearly a very, very disturbing account, but it's on par with the other allegations that we've heard about Combs. Parties, alleged drugging, followed by sexual assault. Now, of course, as I said, these are allegations. Of course, Combs will have an opportunity to defend himself. And from a legal point of view, I wonder if his attorneys could argue, well, she claims she was drugged and disoriented. How exactly does she remember all these details? How does she remember all of this? Is she able to remember all of this 24 years later? And of course, there are obviously a lot of counter responses to that put forward by Jane Doe. But the point is, Combs will probably assert a defense that this did not happen. Now, in the lawsuit, Jane Doe not only sues Sean Combs, but also several Combs businesses, their entities like Daddy's House Recording Studio Inc. and Bad Boy Entertainment. The lawsuit reads, Combs' business enterprise is central to the pervasive acts of sexual assault and abuse committed by him during the last decades. On the surface, each of these businesses served a legitimate purpose.
In front of the world, that image had collapsed.
The whispers grew louder. Was this the end of Diddy's empire? Was this the moment history would remember? Not for the music, not for the accolades, but for the shocking betrayal in that courtroom. The truth was undeniable. No matter what sentence the judge handed down, no matter what verdict the jury reached, Diddy had already lost something far greater. He had lost the trust of his own children. He had lost the one thing that could never be repaired with money, power, or influence. As he sat there in silence, staring blankly, the reality set in. This wasn't just another trial. This wasn't just another battle. He could spin into victory with charm and bravado. This was the collapse of everything he thought he controlled. And for the first time in his career, Diddy was completely powerless. The cameras caught every second his frozen stare, his trembling hands, the way his face seemed to crumble under the weight of his daughter's words. The entire world saw the exact moment the mighty mogul cracked. And from that moment forward, no matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same.